bringing our featured artist. So we actually have a real musician on the show tonight, everybody.
Yeah.
A real trained musician. No, we always have real musicians, but this one stands out because it's like Chinese jazz music, and she does a lot of interesting stuff. I actually got submission from her on Sonic Bids, who set up an account for us and was like running a contest for us. So I actually went through all the submissions, and she was the first one that actually really stood out to me. So I got in contact with her right away, and here we are. So without further ado, Stephanie Chou, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. You have a very interesting thing going on, and I'm excited to have you here. So why don't you tell us just briefly who you are and why you're here, and tell us just a little bit about Quiet Night Thought, and then we'll hear a snippet of it and come back and get deeper with Dave.
Okay, cool. So I'm Stephanie Chou. I'm a saxophonist, composer, and singer from New York. And like Jojo said, I do sort of Chinese fusion with jazz, with some classical and pop. And really, I started out sort of more in classical music, classical saxophone, and then made my way over into the jazz thing. And now I sort of try to take all of my experiences and influences and blend them in together to create, hopefully, a unique sound. So Quiet Night Thought is from my previous album called Asymptote, which was released in 2017. And it is actually a setting of a very famous poem by Li Bai, who is one of the most famous Chinese poets from the Tang Dynasty. And I learned that poem as a child, and it always stuck with me. So I wanted to do a setting of it and put it in sort of a unique situation, because I would say a lot of the harmonies that I chose for this particular piece and the percussion and that kind of thing doesn't really come from the Chinese tradition. So it was sort of my take on blending some culture and poetry with this different sound. And the percussionist you'll hear is Kenny Wallison, who is an established, well-known drummer and percussionist on the New York City jazz scene.
Sweet.
Cool.
Awesome. So I think that's like one of the best, most cohesive intros we've ever heard of a featured artist. So very good job. Quiet Night Thoughts. And it has some cool Chinese writing, which I know nothing about in the title. So check that out. Go get it tattooed or something. I don't know. Anyway, Rob, go ahead.
So bright, a gleam on the foot of my bed. Could there have been a frost already? Lifting myself to look, I found it was moonlight. Sinking back, I thought suddenly of home. I thought suddenly of home.
Stephanie, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Pretty good. So this is it's not just the music that's unique. Your story is pretty unique as well. But I mean, I would say it's almost like at least with this tune, there's like avant-garde jazz, it's almost like ripe for improvisational jazz solos to come in. That's kind of what I was hearing. Do you ever do that? Do you ever play that song live and have soloists play on top of it?
Oh yeah, totally. So when we do it
Awesome.
live, because this recorded version was I overdubbed piano, saxophone, the percussion, or it's all overdubbed. When we do it live, yeah, we open it up for improvisation, with soloists and group improvisation. And a lot of the stuff that I did before this particular album was heavily based in sort of the small group jazz tradition with a lot of improvisation.
Very cool. All right. So I often pontificate about the connection between music and mathematics, right? That was kind of my personal story. I was really, really deep into math when I was very young. And then long before I started getting into music. And then when I started learning instruments, I felt that connection, and I felt like it made sense faster than other people around me, I guess, learning that maybe did not recognize that connection. So I mean, I guess like the story of this is best attributed to Pythagoras, I guess. Just the ancient Greek philosopher, who's also a mathematician, did early work, I'm sure just in terms of scales and music theory. But so you went to Columbia University in New York. You majored in music and math. So I wanted you to offer just some thoughts on this, I guess.
On the connection with math and music? Yeah, I get asked that pretty often. So they're definitely related, for sure. People often ask me, has math influenced in what ways has math influenced your music? Or, of course, the connection with playing an instrument and just the way you think about things is a certain way because of the mathematical brain, I guess. But in terms of, had I continued to study math, I would have gone into an area called knot theory, which is a branch of topology. And I decided to make that the theme for my first album, which is called Prime Knot. And in that particular album, I took different knots, which are like these mathematical shapes that are related to like knots that you think of in real life, tying your shoelace or whatever. I related them to different arrangements and harmonizations for a traditional Chinese song.
That was cool.
Yeah, and then in other ways, like the title song from Asymptote is about an asymptote, that is a metaphor for two people who get close to each other but never really touch, and just like an asymptotic function. So
sure. But so it's interesting, like I was just kind of looking up your upcoming shows and past shows and everything, and you play at like museums and auditoriums and like not common places for bands, I guess, like indie bands or anything like that. But you also play at the business school, and it's kind of explain what you kind of do. Like it sounds like you don't just play, it's almost you kind of
those things for the business school are workshops that are run by a business school faculty member, but they discuss the intersections of math and music, and also how playing in a jazz group is kind of like successful for how musicians working together in a band can be applied to in the workplace.
There you go. Cool.
So there are these like executive education workshops.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that is super cool. All right. Before we depart the interview, I want to give you some time to talk about Comfort Girl, just that project.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Thanks for bringing it up. So my current project is called Comfort Girl, and it is a musical exploration of the lives of former Chinese comfort women. And this is a fairly not well-known story. But during World War II, there were about over 200,000 young girls and women who were basically abducted into sexual slavery by the Japanese army. And they were held captive for years, and many of them were killed. But some of them escaped and went on to have, went on to live a long time. So my current concept album, which I'm calling it, is an exploration of their lives, and it follows the story of one particular woman. And it's arranged for small group jazz ensemble, piano, drums. I play saxophone and I sing. There's another singer, and there's a guy who plays erhu, viola, and violin. So it's in English. There are a couple songs in Chinese, but it's sort of a concept album / song cycle, and that's
that's amazing. I mean, I love just where an artist uses material where there's like a deep story, and it shows just how thoughtful they are in their craft. I think that's amazing. I wanted to mention Stephanie's website. So it's stephaniechoumusic.com. Chou is her last name.
Yep.
One of the better websites I've seen for an artist. I mean, it's very well laid out. All of her stuff is up there, all of her music and media, and it's go check that out. How about social media? Are you active on Twitter and Instagram or anything?
I've got Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of that. I don't do the TikTok like you guys are or Snapchat. That's beyond that's too much for me. But yeah, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Steph Chou Music, STPHCHOU.